Hi, everyone. Nearly 2 in 3 students in Fort Worth ISD cannot read on grade level. A nearly $1 billion budget. Today we are discussing Fort Worth ISD, how Fort Worth ISD is realigning its budget with the district's top priority, literacy. My name is Jacob Sanchez, and I'm the Senior Education Reporter for the Fort Worth Report. I'm sitting inside the District Service Center with Fort Worth ISD Superintendent Karen Molinar. Thank you for joining us for our inaugural Newsmaker Q&A.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Before we officially get started, I want to thank our sponsor, the Sid W. Richardson Foundation, for making this event possible. I also want to remind everyone the Fort Worth Report will host 2 nights of candidate forums, April 16th and 17th. You can find more information on our upcoming events on our website. You can also ask questions in the live chat, and education reporter Matthew Sgroi, who's behind the camera, will be compiling questions from there to ask at the end. And I have to plug this in. Be sure to subscribe to the Stir Report, our education news you can use newsletter that's aimed for parents. So let's get started.
Okay.
I think we really should start kind of at a high level view. Why is the district infusing literacy into the budget?
Well, our data, it shows that we are in a literacy crisis, and our students. Also, we have a math issue. Our data shows that as well. But our students first need to learn to read. But it isn't about our students when they're here with us. It's about our job is to prepare them for college, career, military readiness. But then more importantly, how they're being a productive citizen and how they're contributing to our city. So it's our job to make sure they can read. And so with that, you have to reallocate the funds to make sure it's happening for our students. And I hear our public comments a lot, and I agree with them. And as a teacher, I could say it myself as a student who struggled in the area of reading, they do become frustrated. And that is when you also see behaviors, lack of engagement, not a love for school, which can continue on throughout their middle school career, their high school career, and then they don't want to go to college because it's always been a struggle for them. So there's more, as well as like a mental health and well-being, a wraparound of the whole child that we have to think about as well, of how they're dealing with their struggles in literacy.
And one thing that comes to mind is, you've said this, many others have said it, the district's kind of in a crisis moment. You said it last night. Mm-hmm. And last night you really went through this restructuring on how the district is going to better serve students so that they can read on grade level. How do you even start restructuring a nearly $1 billion budget? I mean, just already it's $23 million that you've restructured.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
but how do you? Yeah. It's like a drop in the bucket, really, right?
Well, I mean, there's always operational costs that we have to do. Those are, non-negotiables. You have transportation, you have gas, you have electric, facilities, and those type of costs as well. But then when we look at what have we done in the past that we're not seeing results. And last night I was really trying to show this is not about what our campus instructional coaches or our coordinators have not done. They have done everything that has been put forward in front of them. But what can we do differently? And we only have so much revenue. And a lot of it is payroll. Like 85% of our budget is payroll. But you're talking everyone from a custodian in a campus to this building, all the way into, central administration. So when you're looking at your available budget, how do you utilize resources, which for us is majority people, to help accelerate student growth? And what can we do differently that touches our kids directly? Last night, it was, as we've done research, and Dr. Rodriguez asked great questions about, did we have research based on the redesign? And, we do. Mm-hmm. But it was really eye-opening of how long we've gone without looking for the academic return of investment. Simple as what's working and what's not working. Public education in Fort Worth's no different. We want to pile something on and layer something on, or buy a new program And you've heard the saying, there's no silver bullet. So the first step for our team was to look at how is the majority of our budget, which are people, how are they impact students, and how can we tell if it's working or not? So that was our first start. And that was the first phase you saw last night, was the redesign of our staffing and how do they work directly with the students.
Could you try to speak up a little more? We just use presenting voices.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It would be good to talk about for everyone watching, what are these new positions, the demonstration teachers, and explain how they will ultimately impact students and reading and math scores.
So let me start with the current positions. So the current positions were campus instructional coaches and our content coordinators and deans of instruction. Our campus instructional coaches, their job was to work with solely teachers. They would help them plan, look at lessons, work in our professional learning communities, look at reteach, study the data, help them pull resources, and then sometimes go and give feedback if they were doing instruction in the classroom or teachers. And then our content coordinators, they would go around and kind of supervise the coaches and then also offer support in professional learning communities. And then our deans of instruction were a new position last year where they helped with professional learning communities as well as instruction on the campus. All three of those roles were very important and are very important. However, none of them touch students on a daily basis. So when we decided to put in place in November small group interventions with our current campus coaches, in just a 5-week period, over 2 or 3 days a week, at a 30-minute chunk, we saw acceleration for our students. We already saw that, and it wasn't consistent. It takes time to put that consistency in place, and they're doing a great job now doing it, especially to push into the second semester. So looking at that and then looking at some of the articles and the research we were looking at, we're like, how can we do a hybrid position that allows impact with students on a daily basis that we can track? And we showed that in the data in February, how our students who received those interventions, how their middle of the year MAP scores grew on growth. So when we looked at that, we're like, how can we make our current revenue funding from the state work in our favor to work with kids, but then still have the ability to also impact the capacity of our teachers. So the demonstration teacher is taking the role, and you will have students assigned to you that you're responsible for in a literacy block for elementary, that they will teach that 120-minute literacy block consistently every day with the group of students that are rostered to them. We'll be able to track the data, track the academic acceleration of those students as well. But then the second layer in that is that we're asking, some of our best teachers who became coaches to now put in practice and model the curriculum and the instructional delivery. And so that's also a checks and balance for us. What's working in our curriculum, what's going to be working in our restructured instructional planning calendar to see what's working and what's not working. They're going to be able to tell us in real time, hey, this instructional planning calendar, here's this resource, here's what we were asking our teachers to guide them. When I was delivering the lesson, here's some of the things that I had to tweak. Here's some things that we need to do for our reteach that we can then rewrite into our curriculum and our IPCs. IPC, instructional planning calendar. And so in April, we'll be showing a glimpse of our first instructional planning calendar that aligns with our literacy framework, and to show some of the difference and changes for next year around that. So the demo teacher also will be able to earn a teacher incentive allotment because they'll have students rostered to them. So if they meet the growth for those students, they would be eligible through the state to be able to receive that additional compensation. And then the other part of their position, after they're done with their literacy block or math block, if they're in secondary, then they would be still working in professional learning communities, helping our teacher capacity, They could be modeling lessons in a classroom for a teacher down the hall. But think of it how different it's going to be. Like if you have a new teacher or even a teacher that has been doing it for 2 or 3 years but wants to go watch someone else deliver the curriculum that we're designing with students on a campus of their own, they just have to walk down the hall now and watch one of our demo teachers. Instead of making arrangements, maybe taking them to a different campus to go see, we're putting in place teacher capacity with someone who's impacting students on a daily basis. So in addition to being able to earn the TIA, Teacher Incentive Allotment, they'll go back on a teacher contract, teacher hours, which they will also be able to earn compensation for after-school tutoring, Saturday tutoring, interventions, as well as we have lots of programs in our district, summer school programming, Fort Worth after-school programming. So it gives also our employees a chance to be able to earn additional compensation. We don't know what's going to happen in the legislative session, but we are planning for what we know we have for revenue right now. Anything additional that comes out will be funding that we can still redirect to our classrooms and also to our employees for compensation. But I wanted to do something in a design to put in place that our support staff who work very hard every day can also benefit from some of the compensation that is out there that the state does provide to be able to receive that. But then more importantly, the priority and the focus is on students and being able to help our students. And there's a climate and culture piece to it as well. It's really showing everyone on a campus, support staff that has historically over the years been centrally located and directed are now on those campuses, working with students and showing that they can drive acceleration as well. So that should help, I'm hoping, build that campus culture and climate on the campuses where they see, as a district, we are all in this together.
And I think something that might be good to address is this isn't necessarily about cost savings.
Correct.
This is about shifting dollars behind literacy so that students can succeed.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great point. It's a reallocation. It really is reallocation of resources to literacy. When you look at cost savings, we don't have any new revenue and haven't had any new revenue. So there's not really cost savings to get there. And if we do have a cost savings, which we did collapse some positions, those cost savings went to additional demo teachers and the acceleration teachers that were presented as well. So any savings that we got from collapsing positions went into those buckets so we can give more direct support to our students.
Can you talk about the collapsing of some of the leadership positions
Sure.
and kind of the restructuring around literacy in leadership?
So we currently, our org chart shows where we have Executive Director of Literacy and Humanities. And we only have one director under that position that worked on literacy. Our district, our size, and when needing to really have a focus on literacy because of our data, we took that position and some other positions so we could create a executive director of just literacy, pre-K or K through 12, that is over the whole spectrum, which also they'll have now MTSS as well as dyslexia.
What's MTSS?
MTSS is a multi-tier support system that is required by the state. So when a student is not on grade level, we document their interventions that we are doing. We look at different strategies, how to help that student. It could be academic, it could be behavioral as well, it could be both. So those are, that's the platform that we use and the system we use to make sure that we're tracking those interventions for that student. So we're putting that under our literacy umbrella as well to show that focus, as well as dyslexia, that we move from special education over to literacy. Because when you look at dyslexia, it starts with a literacy issue. And we want to put it under that umbrella so our students have the same focus as we're putting on as a district around literacy and dyslexia.
Going back to teachers, we had a reader submit a question, and they asked, what role will development and implementation of a robust validated teacher and principal evaluation system and merit-based compensation system have on this effort?
So the teacher one's already in place with teacher incentive allotment. So we have that definitely in place, and that's through the state. We are well into our, I want to say cohort G or H into it. So we have phased in grade levels and content areas. So our vision is that we have multiple teachers in different grade levels, different content areas, different levels that would be able to earn the additional compensation for growing their students. That's what's important. There's also the evaluation piece that's tied to it, which is called T-TEST, which is adopted by the state that we as a district also utilize T-TEST. So the requirement for these new positions would be their T-TEST evaluated so they can still be eligible for that compensation. We are redesigning our principal evaluation system as well to be around student achievement and student growth. And we will, we're hoping to pilot that in 25-26 with a group of principals in addition to that, to really put the urgency on our leadership, campus leaders as well. They have it, but when you can accelerate the growth of your students as a leader, and when we want you to go to some of our most struggling schools, putting that performance pay in principal evaluations will also help. Right now, our principals use what we call T-PEST, which is also by the state, similar to T-TEST for teachers, but it's for principals under the principal standards that are adopted by the state. But that will look a little different when you add in that performance measurement that we are designing and hoping to pilot for 25-26.
I'm going to throw in a curveball, but I know it's connected to everything. You know, the big topic in the district, aside from this, is school closures. On first glance, school closures and literacy may not appear connected, but they really are very interlinked to this priority, right?
Sure. So yeah, the school closure conversation, we've started that process over a year ago. It's just now becoming more of a public facing because we are starting to put campus names on our options and doing our meetings out in the community and continue to do those meetings. We actually have one this evening with our task force that I'll be attending as well. And but it does have something to do with literacy. It's very difficult, and we were in a meeting yesterday morning about facilities, and sitting in the room, being from Fort Worth and in Fort Worth for so long, 26 years, any school that looks like an option is so hard for me to even think about, because I've walked in every single campus. At some time through my career, I've been on every single campus. And I love this district. Been here since we were in 86,000, student district. So those are really hard conversations. But when we're looking at the impact where a demo teacher could impact a campus, more acceleration teachers, we have to look at, how can we increase those resources? And right now, our enrollment has decreased quite a bit. We're down in the 70s for student enrollment, and we're decreasing every year. So when we look at wanting to do different things and reallocate funds to literacy and look at strategies, we have to look at where can we find that funding. And right now, our facilities, it costs, and it's just not about cost. It's hard to balance. You have to put that in there. There's the conditions of our facilities. But that means there's cost to do maintenance for them. And we can't be dependent on bonds to consistently renovate and keep our buildings up as well. So when you look at it, it's condition of buildings. You want to make sure that a student walks in a building, they feel proud, the air condition does work, they have the correct wiring, the smart boards, anything that they need. And, the reality is our funding sources are decreasing, but the needs of our students have increased. So where can we find some of those allocations in addition to that? And when you look at an elementary campus that may have 250 students to an elementary campus that has could have 500 students, Right now, they're receiving the same resources. And they both have a full-time principal, AP, counselor, support staff. And so when you look at that, you don't want to cut support. So we have to look at, we have all these empty seats in these other facilities. What can we do differently so we can increase support, but we can't continue to just keep adding to every single campus?
Earlier you mentioned, and we've talked about this, the restructuring of the district's literacy framework. Can you explain that and how that ties into the budget and how we improve outcomes?
So the literacy framework is really around what we call the instructional planning calendar, and being able to give guidance to the classroom, to the teacher, and we'll hear that we're taking creativity away, and that's not the case, because instructional delivery is the creativity part. The standards are already decided by the state. The resources have already been adopted, by the board and implemented into our system. But now it's like clarification. Our students are very mobile. When you look at how mobile we are as a district, we have some campuses that are in the 30 percentile with mobility. Their students are moving in and out, and they're going to other Fort Worth ISD schools. Right now, we don't have a consistent instructional planning calendar in place where our schools are on the same scope and sequence, that we're within a day or two of what that lesson delivery looks like. What's the standard being taught, how we're assessing that. So when we do have a student who moves campus from campus, they're able to not miss a beat. There's always an adjustment period. I mean, I was very lucky. I did not have to ever move my elementary campus once I started, but I can't imagine as an elementary student to move not once, but twice. And I'm talking within a year's time or 3 times. So, what are we putting in place for our students that are transient in our district to be able to give them that structure? But then, our reality is that we have positions that have not been filled this year at this time. So we have long-term substitutes. What structure do we have in place to assist them? Because thankfully we have substitutes who are stepping in to fill those vacancies. And then we have teachers who are, coming out. They are alternately certified, where it's very difficult for them to be able to know the actual instructional delivery, the standards, the expectation of the craft of teaching. So all of this structure is going to help us with multiple different layers of teacher capacity. And we have some fantastic teachers. Some of them I call my friends. They are fantastic teachers. And, they get it. They understand when we're our strongest, we all have a framework, what we're following. The creativity comes in how you design that lesson to deliver it. So you'll see that in the instructional planning calendar. We're not telling them what to say and how to say it, but we're saying, here's our standard, here's our demonstration of learning. When you go into your block, it's an expectation that we'll be pulling our Tier 2 kids and working with them differently in our Tier 3 kids. But then it's our job too, instead of our teachers trying to find reteach lessons, which take a lot of their time, they don't have time for that. We need to provide that for them. So you'll see that change in our literacy framework and our math framework as well. We have a great team working on it. They are gung-ho. Super, super proud and happy, and just really honored how they've just stepped up and say, we know this is what's right for our kids in our district, and they are going at it full force to make sure we're ready for the beginning of this year. So your question, I can go on and on. Your question is, how does that impact budget? Well, last night you saw the introduction that we know we need to add in a phonics piece. We currently use Amplify. It has a very small phonics piece to it, but our kids need more. And I'm not talking about just our students below grade level. I'm not just talking about my K1 students who come into school for the first time. All of our students need that strong phonics base. It's just not about reading, but it's also about writing. How does that translate into our writing as well for our students? So that will be a budget application that you'll see, adding that into our literacy framework as well. And then, of course, there's the professional development piece, the training piece. And then, we're tapping the shoulders of some highly qualified teachers to help us work on the instructional planning calendar and the literacy framework as well. And so there is additional compensation that we're going to pay them to do this after hours. All of that's part of a budget that we need to plan for.
It goes back to people, like you said earlier.
It always goes back to people. And you know what? That's what this profession is about people. About little people starting at 3 years old. And to our big people, we have some 19, 20 years old who are with us in our Success High School and now Como. High school or Como Success, our overage program that we renamed last night. I probably got the name wrong. And, so we're talking from 3-year-olds to adults. And we have adult ed, too, in our district. Mm-hmm. So when we say we have the spectrum, but it is always about people.
And going back to kind of the literacy framework, a big part of that, I'm assuming, is reading curriculum, right? What can we expect to see in terms of the changes in reading curriculum? Last night you talked about Bluebonnet, which sure. has gotten a lot of attention in the past year.
Yes.
So
the state, they give us funding for high quality instructional materials. And there are different levels of funding dependent on the materials you pick. When we're looking at revenue, we're looking at ways to be able to reallocate funds and how to save money and look at other needs. One of the things we look at is the money that we could get from the state, and do we take advantage of some of that extra funding? One of the caveats with that the state has put in place is the adoption of high quality instructional materials. So one of them is Bluebonnet. And so the process we're doing right now is a process we have done for years. As a teacher, I reviewed materials when it came up for adoption, gave feedback. I was part of some of those committees. So we're doing the review right now. So the Leading and Learning team, they have invited, not just for literacy, but for math, to look at and view all the materials that the state has said qualifies for funding at all different levels. And we want to hear the teacher feedback. We want to hear what they have to say and what they think of the materials. I know Bluebonnet's a hot topic. You look at the math is almost identical to the one we have in place. But what concerns me is every time you change a curriculum or you change a resource, it takes our teachers time to learn that resource. So there's this balance, like, is getting funding, additional funding from the state, worth revamping your entire resources and your teachers learning an entire resource? How much time and implementation dip would cause us as a district, because we're really just into about year 3 of full implementation of our current literacy curriculum in elementary. You're always you can't have 4,000 teachers who have the same opinion about any type of a resource, but we do have teachers who are saying, like, just give us the phonics piece and let us keep going. Like, we got to keep moving. We know this resource now. We do have some things in our curriculum in place around that resource, but I have to give our teachers the option to look at them and view them and give us feedback to see what they think. If there's something better out there that they feel, they're in the classrooms, they're with our students, then I want to hear what they have to say.
When should we expect that to come to the board?
To be able to do any implementation, it would be in April or May that we would bring a recommendation to the board. But that's not going to come without us sharing the feedback from our teachers and from our administrators as well, our principals. We have very strong instructional leaders on our campuses, and we're building them to be even stronger instructional leaders, all the way from APs to our principals. So they need to give us feedback as well, because this is their daily work. This isn't my daily work. This is their daily work. So they have to monitor it. They have to hold themselves accountable for what's happening with our students and the growth that we're expecting. So they need to make sure that the curriculum that they are reviewing and they're giving us feedback on, they feel can move the needle.
Let's go a little deeper into the budget, and I'm kind of curious about what does this new literacy focused budget look like when we go to each level of school, so elementary, middle, and high school, and particularly, let's start with elementary. What support will the budget show for K to second grade literacy efforts, and not solely third and higher up?
Yeah.
Because we know that's a lot of focus, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
It's tested.
Definitely a lot of focus. And I would say our budget is definitely not over yet. Next week we call our budget hearings, and how we're tying all of our budget together. And then we look at our revenue sources. Everything is around our strategic plan, which of course is a focus on literacy and math. And when we look at what do we need to accelerate and what have the campuses requested through their CIPs, what have our
What's a CIP?
campus improvement plan. Sorry, we have so many acronyms in the field of education. I know. Campus improvement plans, which drives their campus budgets as well as we do as a district. Ours is a district improvement plan when we do our needs assessment, looking at our data. So when you look at that pre-K through 2 space, we're looking at curriculum, of course. Pre-K is way different. They have a different assessment. They utilize a different curriculum. And so we have an executive director who is over that, and then they have coordinators under that division as well. But then when you go in that K2 space, some examples you saw last night are going to be those intervention teachers, as well as that phonics-based program that will be solely pushed into that K through 2. So those are the ones we have right now. But then, as I say, we do our budget hearings next week. But those are ones that we already have the RFPs out, which those are response for a product that we put out. So we cannot purchase any type of program unless we put, it's like kind of a call out, and then our vendors respond to that call and we review those with a team of people. So then when you look into that 3 to 5 space, you saw we're pushing those demo teachers in as well for that. And then also that's when you look at our MAP testing, and that goes in all the way to kinder. Currently we have in place Lexia that we have for an additional supplement. So when you look at budget, you're looking at all of those supplemental resources. You're looking at usage reports. Are campuses really using them consistently? And then do we tie it back to academic growth and have those resources been able to show that they're growing our students? Or is it just taking time away from our small group tier 2, tier 3 instruction, that resource is not working for our kids? So those are all the things right now we're looking at in our budget, how to impact. When you go into middle school, you saw last night we talked about block scheduling, which has already gotten mixed reviews. I know I've gotten some emails like, way to go, our kids need more literacy time. I've had some middle school teachers say 45 minutes is not enough time. Because our students are coming to our middle school teachers behind grade level, and we're asking them to do the impossible. You have, 5 classes, because they have their PLC, they have their planning period. So you can have 5 classes of a reading class where your students are coming in below grade level, and I'm giving you 45 minutes to make a difference. That's impossible, and our scores are showing it. So it's doing something different. But there's a balance with that, Jacob, because when you do a double block, you have to make sure you're also providing our electives to our students. That's why they come to school. They come to school to stay engaged. So we still want to make sure they have those opportunities in their elective classes as well, to be able to learn and explore, new opportunities that they're not exposed to in elementary. So that's a big budget when we're looking at the middle school. We have not finished the staffing on that. They have to sit down and we have to look at campus by campus. It's going to be different. We have to look at course offerings. So it will be an impact to our budget, but we cannot not do it because we're not going to change our scores by just continuously saying you have 45 minutes to to work miracles. In middle school, being a middle school teacher is a blessing anyway, but then to ask them to do that. And then, there's some teachers who are not going to like the block scheduling, so we're going to have to give them support and give them that literacy framework and math framework and help them with the resources and planning it out and say, like, you're not on your own. I'm not telling you to double block and you have to be the one responsible for planning everything. Our support team is going to be doing that for you. And so you spend more time on the delivery of the instruction versus the planning of the instruction.
And then on the high school level,
Yes, so speak up when we get a chance.
He wants us to yell. Usually I'm loud and I know. For high school, so that is our second phase. We're really starting to dig into our EOCs and our Algebra 1. High school's always very different. And over the years, I've watched, observed, and learned to really make sure we have a lot more high school English 1, English 2 teachers at the table in algebra, our math courses, as well as science, to really help us. How do we redesign that? High school is just a different. It's whole, you have some kids who are coming in with credits from middle school, some students who don't have enough credits to be on grade level, first-time freshmen. Sometimes, they're behind going into their sophomore year. They have to have their EOCs to be able to graduate. And if they don't, it's our job to give them classes to go back and make sure they learn that material at the same time as learning their next EOC to be able to pass that test and graduate. So that redesign is our second phase of our priority. But we need our high school people to help us with that, and then do the research and study the models that are working around the nation and within Texas as well.
let's talk about dyslexia. We touched on it earlier. What can parents expect around dyslexia screenings? You said it last night. Too many students are falling between the cracks.
Yes, yeah. And, when dyslexia screening started in the district, and we created a dyslexia department years ago, it really was, this philosophy. You cannot even identify a student with dyslexia into second or third grade because they haven't been given an educational opportunity before. We were following guidelines presented to us, and we followed them. They have definitely changed over the years, and now there are different screening tools. MAP is used for one of the screening tools, and that is our beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year assessment that we look at for screening as well as growth for our students, and projections on how they'll do, of course, on STAR and other assessments, and how they are in comparison nationally across our state and national norm. So when we look at our dyslexia, we have increased, and Caroline James comes and she speaks at our board meetings. We have gone to the Key School. We have done the simulations, and it was very eye-opening to go through that. But it made us really reflect on how many of our students did we miss in elementary that are currently sitting in our middle schools and our high schools. How can we start screening now to be able to intervene with those students? What type of schedule do we need to have in middle school and high school to be able to provide them with those programs and instruction? And at the same time, we're looking at that. We're looking at what programs are going to work best for our secondary students. And during that time, we've been studying elementary and doing our research on elementary dyslexia programs. NIHouse has been great. We've had it in the district since we started our dyslexia department. However, is it time to evolve? And we're seeing some other districts utilize some different curriculums that are seeing more of acceleration of growth for their students. So it is a literacy. This is part of literacy because those programs are literacy based. And it also helps some of our students. When you do the screening and identification, some students accelerate faster than others, and there are some students who may have not qualified under the screening but show the characteristics. So how can some of the program that we decide on and that we adopt work for some of the students who haven't been officially identified.
I kind of want to step out from just the school district. We know that the school district alone cannot improve literacy rates. Like, you have a job in the classroom, but there's a lot of outside factors. How does the district and you plan to lean on its partners, like the city government?
Yeah. So the city has been very vocal of saying, like, let us help. What do you need from us? Last night you heard me at the end. I know you heard me because you were there. I saw you in the audience. But at the end of the presentation, one of the things is we're looking at how to utilize our volunteers. We have so many people who want to help. And that can look in so many different ways. It can be a volunteer who goes in, takes care of our teachers, runs copies, brings them a surprise snack, or helps with. We have volunteers who do traffic control outside of our schools, and like all different capacities, PTA, boosters, all of them are community partners as well. They may be parents, may not be. A parent is a community partner. But how we have other volunteers who want to come and directly impact literacy. So we, and this is just one area, but we are working with Read to Win, which is definitely an elementary-based volunteer program that can work with our students. We're going to target first grade right now, but I'm hoping I have so many volunteers so I can expand to second grade. And we teach the volunteers how to go in and add that extra support and literacy. I'm not asking them to use our instructional planning calendar, to use our resources, because there's no way they can do that. I mean, that's just, that's our full-time teacher's job. But there are ways that they can come in and work through this program to accelerate and help support our students. Some of it also can be coming and reading with our students. In addition to that, it's for our secondary students, it's internships, or it's exposure to careers they don't even realize are out there. But then what type of classes do they need to take? What type of certifications would they need to get to participate in those careers or degrees? So I need it all the way from a pre-K, once again, to a 12th grade spectrum of it. Many of our students, they can't wait to have enough credits to graduate so they can go and work half a day. So many of our students are on an abbreviated schedule in our high schools to be able to go and work. What if our community partners said, let them come work for me and there'll be a paid internship, but have them learn where it's towards a certification or towards a career opportunity that they can go and start their college hours, but now they've been exposed to the workforce and not just trying to earn extra money. And that's the reality of our students. And it's a reality that they help their families, but then for themselves, if they want to be able to, go shopping and buy what they want. I mean, I worked when I was in high school, same thing. I wanted my own money, but all of them have their own story. But what if, as a community, we said, let's make sure that you're working towards something that can help you as an adult, and it's just not immediate.
Earlier, we talked about Austin and the legislature and not waiting on them. We know that the legislature will impact the budget. Then we also know DC's going to impact the budget at some point with what is happening there. How will our federal and state lawmakers affect the district's literacy push?
So that's a great question. I hope you ask some of them, and maybe they can help me with that. But when I think about the state currently, right now I have to be in this mode of glass half full, because that's what we need in our district right now is glass half full. So I can't be dependent on them. We do have revenue. We do have state funding that we know we're going to continue to receive. We want more. They're going to give us more. We just don't know what that looks like. And honestly, we don't know what restrictions come with that funding. Sometimes only certain groups can receive additional compensation. Like I explained last night, it could just be our teachers only can receive that. That's why we're switching these roles, so they'll be coded as teachers, so they can receive anything coming out of legislative session. A great thing that we talked about was when we look at our instructional materials. The state is like, I'll give you funding. Here's levels, but you have to pick this material. These qualify, but your funding sources are different. So those are tough decisions we have to make as a district as well, because there is money you can technically, what we say, leave on the table, because we don't believe that's what's right for our district or our community or our students, or for our teachers and who are instructing as well. So I don't know what that's going to look like for literacy. That's why we have to use what we have currently to reallocate ourselves for. But then anything additional, we have to make sure it goes back to our classrooms, and that could be in the form in our campuses of teacher compensation, additional staff members, whatever that can look like that will directly impact our students. When you talk about the federal, that is very scary for us. I cannot imagine that they would do anything to our special education funding. You would hope not. We need more, not less for that, definitely. And then one of the things that we're really concerned about is currently every student in our district, they're able to eat free breakfast and free lunch at any of our schools. That is huge for our students and for our families. And not everyone takes advantage of it, and that's a choice, right? That's a student choice, that's a parent choice, but it's available. We offer free dinners through our grants, our federal grants, in the evenings at many of our Fort Worth after-school sites. Our Fort Worth after-school sites are mostly run through grants that are federal and state level. We need those. We must have those. That's the scariest part, is the unknown for us right now, because then we're going to have to say, we cannot not let our students be fed, and we need after-school programming, because that's sometimes just the safety for our students as well, that they have somewhere to go after school. And then we do enrichment. It's a whole different, it's their fun space for them. So we're going to have to then decide, what do we do with the funding we currently have? And that we have to supplement with that. We also have a lot of partners who receive grants that, we don't know yet if they're going to have their grants funded, and we may be matching them right now. What happens if they don't get the match and we don't have the match? What kind of wraparound services could our students now go without with that?
I think this is a perfect stopping point for Matthew to ask some of our audience questions for the next few minutes before we wrap up.
So this was touched on a little bit, but one question I saw was, how will the budget support strategies that are in place to advance the progress of African American students in the district and campuses with high African American student populations?
So when you look at the redesign plan, and when we leave here, I'll make sure that the full presentation was posted on our website. When we look at the Read to Win program for the remainder of this year, we're specifically targeting our highest enrolled African American student campuses with our highest enrolled first grade students. And then we're looking at our students that are below grade level in that first grade area. So that's the first target with that. And going into next school year, we'll continue to look at our African American students, but it's also our programming, and we look at our phonics. A lot of our African American students have a lot of the same characteristics of our emergent bilingual students. When we look at the need for definitely curriculum that enhances listening, speaking, writing, and of course, reading, all of what we're measured for our emergent bilingual through TALPAS, our African American students can benefit from those strategies and curriculum, and as well as our regular program students. So there will be definitely enhanced resources that all of our students will be able to take advantage of. Then acceleration teachers, and it's in our district strategic plan. It's called out about how We need to close the achievement gap with our African American students and our emergent bilingual. So when you look at our accelerations teachers that we have in the redesign, they will specifically be working with those targeted students as well. And you'll see that we had it was 15 in different content areas. And then in science and social studies, they talked me into doing a pilot for high school for acceleration teachers. I can give a little when, people talk me into stuff, and they're like, just let me have a pilot. And I'm like, okay, because high school's so different. They're like, no, we can do this. So I was like, so we put some acceleration teachers that they're going to pilot in a high school around science and social studies as well. But when you look in that elementary middle space, we are definitely targeting our African American students and our emergent bilingual students.
Well, what phonics instruction programs specifically, and does the district know yet, will be used to support these services?
We currently have an RFP out. We do not know, and so that's under review. And last night we actually had someone in the audience, a teacher, former teacher, is currently a teacher, Amanda Ine. She's emailed me a phonics program that she's familiar with, and I encourage if we have teachers out there who work with or retired teachers, I know have worked with other phonics programs. We know all the big ones that we have used over the years, and we probably still have some teachers using them, in their classrooms. And so, we threw the net out there. Let's see what works. But what works for our students? What have we seen research that has shown results? But then more importantly, how can we tie it in to our district for our teachers and make sure that we can get up and running and go full scale next year?
Awesome. Some parents are wondering, how will the district focus on building capacity for identifying and getting help sooner for kids with disabilities? We talked about some of the support systems for them, but what about the identifying where these students are, and how will the district do that and build the capacity with staff and et cetera?
So as last night I showed in the org chart where the MTSS multi-tier support system is being placed under our literacy block to really have more of a focus on that early screening. And it's like a early warning system. When you look at your beginning of the year map data, when you look at your middle of the year map data, there are screeners in there that we can identify. But that means we need to teach our principals how to identify that. We need to teach our teachers. Here are some of the characteristics to be able to say, okay, we already know that these students need additional supports. It's a process when, you do not want to immediately go to where a student's being tested and placed in special education. We have definitely strategies we need to put in place first and document that we're being consistent with those strategies. The dyslexia screening and characteristics also can help a student before they're identified, because those are great strategies. In addition, they're great teaching strategies, honestly. And so we'll look at those. The reading academies that are required by the state of Texas has some of that built in as well. But our problem as a district is we never took the reading academies and what was taught and mandated in those and then showed how does that work with our current curriculum, our current instructional practices, to be able to look at that child as a whole, because there are strategies that are in those academies that show some of that early screening. But then the second part is that partnership with our parents, is having more parent-teacher conferences, looking at our students who we identify as Tier 2 or Tier 3 who are not on grade level, or that we're worried are not going to be on grade level at the end of that school year, and be able to look at that data together and speak with them and talk to them and say, hey, try this at home. We're doing this here. And then after a period of time, we need to accelerate. But that's a parent and teacher relationship that is very important, that we have to build. And that means parents, we want to hear what's going on at home is in addition to that, and how can we work together with it. That parent always has a right to come in and ask the principal and ask the teacher, they're struggling. What are you doing here at school? What are some options that I have as next? Parents have that right.
We have time for one more reader question before we wrap up.
Let's end on what can the community do to help this process? Can nonprofits come to the district and help? How can the district partner with nonprofits? But also, how can parents be made aware of the budget process? And what can they do throughout it to help the district or let the district know where their concerns lie? What can parents do?
That was like 3 questions in
Yes,
one.
there were.
That
There
was
were 3
We're going to go
questions,
with that. So definitely our community members are nonprofit. They're and our funders, they're definitely interested. I've spent some time with them going and sharing our strategic plan, showing some of our new school models, going and looking at different school models and other districts, doing the research. Definitely feel we have some who are interested and being partners with us to try something different and pilot it in 1 or 2 schools. So I feel like they're on board with us. I think the more we see trying different strategies for different schools, for different needs, we'll have people who want to engage more. When we talk about our parents, how can they be part of the process? When I ask you for feedback, I'm serious about the feedback. I mean, when we did the parent-teacher conferences and we said, please, give us feedback. Did this work for you? Did this not? How's it going with your child? All the questions embedded. I read every single comment that was that anyone, and our teachers gave feedback on the conferences. I heard what they had to say about it too. When we say we're listening, we want to hear from our parents. We want to. In addition to that, we have our dashboard that we brought last month that we are creating, and that will be very transparent with student data. Our parents will be able to drill down to their individual students and be able to look at it, but they'll also be able to see as a campus how their campus is doing. That's a great time for them to become involved. Our campuses are required to have what we call a site-based decision-making team, and that's composed of parents, community members, there's usually faculty members, as well as maybe someone represented from a district level. They plan their budget. They do their campus needs assessment that drives their campus improvement plan. They look at the data. They decide how that budget for that campus is going to be implemented on their school as well. So those are some great ways for our parents to become involved with budget planning at what we call the local level, at the campus level. And then what we see the needs are help drive our decision making for strategies and initiatives in the district level in addition to that. Public comment, I sit and I take notes. I have my own coding system that I do. I have followed up with parents on the side or public comment people and asked probing questions, can you tell me more about that? Or say I think you're under the wrong impression about this. Can we help clarify it? So public comment, they can email. We have a lot of our public send in statements. We read all of those. But I think that's going to evolve more next year for budget planning. It's like someone's in my office listening. But we are going to be doing a bigger community out push for budget planning of getting feedback from our community, our parents especially, and our teachers before we start the budget planning process. That will always go back to our strategic plan. Where do we see not enough funds put into this priority? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where do we see I don't think this is working, at our school or at a district level, and of course looking at data. So you'll see that in the 26-27 budget planning, which will really start in the fall of 25.
And to wrap up, I like to end these types of things with a look forward. What else should parents expect around literacy and the budget?
So in April, you're going to see a glimpse of our literacy framework as well as our math, because I think it's very important. We also are going to be able to share where we're at with some of our resource materials that we know we need to put in place for additional support for that. And around literacy specifically for the budget, and then also what we're taking off our plates for additional resources that we have currently been spending money on that we do not need to spend money on. So it's phases. Like that was phase 1 last night. We're going to head into phase 2 as well.
Perfect. Well,
oh, and then we're also in April, sorry.
Oh.
Workshop. Super excited about this. We're going to be talking about efficiencies, really focusing on like operations and some changes that are happening there because, that impacts not only our students, but also our teachers and all of our staff that are on our campuses. So we'll be doing a highlight about that as well, how to improve in those areas.
And budget adoption is when?
So we hope to adopt a budget by end of May, June at the latest, because our year starts July 1 for our budget cycle. And part of that will be deciding if there's a compensation increase for any staff members that we're working with our board finance committee on options for that in addition to it.
Thank you, Dr. Molinar. This is a great conversation, and thank you to everyone who tuned in for this.
Yeah.
And thank you for sticking with us through our technical difficulties. This is our first one, and we're going to work out the kinks in the future. Thank you for tuning in, and send your questions in and feedback to us, and be sure to subscribe to the Store Report. Thank you. Have a good day.